Officials confirm a case of bubonic plague in one Chinese city. The same day, a patient is diagnosed with dengue fever in another region. But World Health officials claim they don't present high risk. Severe flooding and heavy rain prompt high-level alerts in central and southwest China. Previously delayed college entrance exams are postponed again, this time due to the flood. Footage of an unusual traffic accident in China shows a bus slowing down before making a sudden turn that sent it crashing into a lake below. Authorities say 21 were killed, with more injured. China's wolf warrior diplomacy appears to be fueling anti-Beijing sentiment worldwide. We explain what makes it unique and where its roots come from. And in Hong Kong, 4 Epoch Times distribution workers were arrested on July 1st. Police threatened to send one of them to mainland China for live organ harvesting. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now to China's virus situation, but this time we're not talking about the CCP virus. Instead, the spotlight is on the bubonic plague and dengue fever. The case of bubonic plague has been officially diagnosed by doctors in a Chinese city. It's located in China's Inner Mongolia region, about 600 miles north of Beijing. On Saturday, one hospital inside the city alerted authorities about the suspected case. A day later, local authorities issued a citywide Level 3 warning for plague prevention, the second lowest in a 4-tiered system. The World Health Organization said that China's bubonic plague outbreak is being well managed and is not considered high risk. According to China state-run media, at least 5 cases of bubonic plague emerged in China last year. The bubonic plague is highly infectious and often fatal. This disease is spread mostly by rodents. And a new case of dengue fever has also appeared, this time in eastern China. Local health authorities say a patient in Anhui province has been diagnosed with the deadly virus. The person had reportedly traveled to India, Pakistan, and Myanmar, formerly Burma. Dengue fever is mainly spread by infected mosquitoes. Symptoms may include a high fever, muscle and joint pain, headache, and vomiting. Heavy rains continue to lash large parts of China, prompting high-level alerts and landslides. The severe rainstorms and flooding disrupted the first day of Chinese widely anticipated college entrance exams that were already put back by 1 month due to the CCP virus.
In China, heavy rainfall disrupted the first day of national college entrance exams, which are attended by millions of students. In a county of China's Anhui province, students were trapped in the exam buildings as the streets outside were flooded. The exams were postponed again in Anhui province, this time due to the flood. In another city, floodwaters gushed through the city's ancient bridge. The nearly 500-year-old bridge is a protected national heritage site in China. And in the city of Wuhan, where the CCP virus epidemic first erupted late last year, part of the Yangtze River reached a flood warning level. Traffic moved slowly over flooded streets. Local authorities used giant pumps to remove the water. And China's largest dam, the Three Gorges Dam in Hebei province, has been discharging floodwaters, while the downstream regions have seen surging floods.
It was already flooding downstream, and it will be worse if authorities continue to discharge floodwaters. The officials don't care for the safety of the people. As long as the Three Gorges Dam doesn't have problems, it's an achievement in their eyes.
The city of Qianjiang in the same province became the first city to issue a Level 1 flood response alert, the highest level. Authorities in Hebei province issued orange flood warning alerts, with some rivers reaching 10 feet higher than warning levels. The neighboring Hunan province also issued the alert, with a large-scale landslide occurring in the province on Monday. About 1,000 feet of the provincial road collapsed. As 6 rounds of heavy rain brought a record amount of rainfall in Hebei province, the water level of over 1,000 reservoirs in the province crept up over the warning line. According to local reports, floods and other disasters have affected more than 5 million people in Hebei province, with numerous deaths and reports of missing people.
A peculiar traffic accident has left over 20 dead and more injured in China's Guizhou province, where a bus driving along a busy roadway abruptly raced through lanes of traffic, crashed through a fence, and plunged into the lake below. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
A bus in China's southwestern Guizhou province has crashed into a reservoir. Authorities say 21 people were killed and another 16 were injured. The cause of the accident is still unclear, but surveillance video shows the bus slowing down on the road before suddenly turning left and smashing through a fence. More clips later emerged online, showing the damaged guardrail and people in the water. A man can be heard in the background calling an emergency hotline.
A bus fell into the river here at Hongshan Lake just a minute ago.
State media reported that some of the bus's passengers were students scheduled to take the national college entrance exam. Other videos circulating online show people attempting to resuscitate a young girl. Later, what appears to be a notice from local government officials emerged online. It asked workers to not spread information about the incident and only follow the official narrative. Juliet Song, NTD News.
A Hong Kong police officer threatened to send a local distributor for newspaper The Epoch Times to China to have her organs harvested alive. The worker was arrested while handing out promotional material during a recent protest.
On July 1st, thousands of Hong Kongers poured onto the streets in protest of the draconian national security law imposed by Beijing. The police arrested over 300 people in the Causeway Bay, including 4 distribution personnel of the Epoch Times Hong Kong edition. The Epoch Times extensively covers Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests and Beijing's erosion of the city's freedom. One of the 4 arrested said she often distributed posters and promotional materials during protests, and the police never intervened, but this time was different.
Suddenly, the police came. They blocked the road on both sides and didn't let me leave. I didn't know what was happening. I thought maybe they would just check something and then would let me go. But I waited for a long time and eventually they brought me to the police station. That's when I knew I was arrested.
Chen said she did nothing wrong and refused to wear the prison uniform during police detention, but was verbally abused by police for that.
A female police officer tried to put the prison uniform over my head 3 times. I said I'm not wearing it. She didn't force me. But behind me there was a male police officer who said, "You don't sign your names, nor do you wear the clothes. Then how about we send you to mainland China and have your organs harvested alive?"
Forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience has been practiced.
Last year, an independent people's tribunal in London found that the Chinese regime has and continues to harvest the organs from prisoners of conscience. The tribunal said that one source of organs, and probably the main source, were adherents of the persecuted spiritual group Falun Gong.
My tears ran down at this moment. I asked him loudly, "How many people have you sent back to the mainland for organ harvesting? How many times have you been involved in this? Have you done it before? If you did, admit it. Don't wear the mask. I will recognize you and I will let the world know that you have done something like this. Do you all agree with forced organ harvesting? It's such an evil deed. Yet no police answered my question. There were a swarm of police there, all dressed in black. Yet they were all silent.
Another of the newspaper workers arrested was handing out promotional materials the day before at a metro station when a police officer warned her that this would be the last time she would be allowed to do this.
At the time, the police looked at me and said, "This is your last time." When I came back, I thought, from tomorrow, July 1st, will the police change their attitude to us, the Epoch Times distribution personnel? And it turned out they did change.
Despite the threats posed by the national security law, Zhang said she will continue to distribute the paper.
A lot of the Hong Kong media have been controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. The Hong Kong government is also controlled by the CCP. If people miss out on the voice from the other side and only receive the party's propaganda, the brainwashing will change them gradually, just like in the mainland.
The Hong Kong edition of the Epoch Times said they condemned the police for its indiscriminate arrests and the threats such actions pose to the city's press freedom and freedom of speech. In a statement, the Bureau vowed to continue reporting on the truth and defending Hong Kongers' rights to be informed. Sarah Liang and Penny Zhou, NTD News, Hong Kong.
Even as Beijing mobilized a so-called people's war against the CCP virus, China is busy on other fronts, fighting the U.S., Australia, ratcheting up tensions against India, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. China's aggressive actions fueled a rift with the rest of the world.
As China faces a host of internal problems, the regime's wolf warrior diplomacy is becoming more active than ever. China's wolf warriors get their name from a famed series of Chinese action films, which depict Chinese soldiers who stop at nothing to aggressively defend the country's interests. The name now refers to a unique form of diplomacy called fearless by some and trouble-seeking by others. These diplomats also regularly use social media to hit back against other countries' criticisms of China. Over the past few months, China has been sparring with many countries on a wide range of fronts, from claiming the CCP virus originated in other countries to eroding Hong Kong's freedom through its new national security law. Back in May, Beijing enacted a law banning acts of subversion and terrorism in Hong Kong, allegedly to protect its national interests. The decision sparked strong condemnation and accusation of an assault on Hong Kong's autonomy. The United States, in particular, quickly began mulling over sanctions in response. In a resolution adopted by over 500 votes, the European Parliament agreed to take China to international court if it imposes the law. On another front last month, at least 20 Indian soldiers died after a violent face-off with Chinese troops in a disputed Himalayan region. Chinese side casualties remain unknown. An in-depth report published by an American magazine reveals the attack on Indian troops was ordered by China. According to the report, the operation was approved by Chinese Army General Zhao Zongqi, head of the Western Theater Command. Zhao has previously stated that China must never appear weak to avoid what he called exploitation by the United States and its allies. The violent border face-off appears to be an effort to teach India a lesson for its recent pushback against the regime. The Chinese Communist Party is taking a hard-line approach to foreign relations. A curious move as the country faces increasing internal crises, including a weakening economy, impacts from the CCP virus, massive flooding, a locust plague, and food shortages. Logically, the country would be expected to focus on domestic governance and response and avoid exacerbating external conflicts. But with the world as its witness, the regime is doing the opposite. While Chinese troops are confronting India high in the Himalayas, thousands of miles away, locals from a small group of disputed islands have spotted Chinese ships every day since mid-April. More conflicts also arose in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, prompted by the presence of Chinese vessels and its air force. On the virus front, in the face of pandemic threats, Western countries tend to focus their efforts toward minimizing losses and avoiding further damage. But some say the Communist Party appears to have a different mindset.
If people see this pandemic as a danger, then the CCP sees it as an opportunity. What opportunity? A chance to restructure a new world order, a chance to expand the global governance model with the CCP characteristics.
The U.S. has been a world leader for the past decades, especially following the aftermath of World War II.
The CCP judges that the globalization process is irreversible and that the dominance of the United States will inevitably be broken. The opportunity to reestablish a new order is now upon the party, and it thinks it must seize the opportunity to make a run for its long-coveted world leader position.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has stated that China is at the peak of its development and that the world is undergoing profound changes unseen for a century.
In a nutshell, it's equivalent to saying it's time to compete with the United States for dominance.
When China's official virus figures were declining while cases in other countries were on the rise, one of China's state media outlets published an article. It's titled "Seizing Opportunities from the Unprecedented Changes Unseen in a Century" and describes how the regime sees these so-called opportunities. According to the article, since modern times, Western countries have been dominating the process of global governance. The United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and other political and financial organizations were all established under Western countries' leadership. The article adds that the Western-led system is undergoing tremendous changes, and the CCP is eager to seize the rare opportunity. It states China should continue to deepen extensive exchanges with the rest of the world in political, economic, and cultural fields. China needs to take the initiative to participate in global governance and consciously create a time of strategic opportunity through reforms to perfect international rules. Driven by that mindset, the party repeatedly stirs up disputes over border issues from East Asia to South and the Southeast in order to show off its power.
The CCP wants to burn down the existing order and its rules by starting fires everywhere. That way, the world will gradually accept China's proposals for new global governance and the new order.
Yet the wolf warrior diplomacy seems to be doing an even better job of arousing anti-Chinese regime sentiment around the world.
The U.S. FBI director calls China the greatest threat to the United States' economic and national security. But he made it clear he's not talking about Chinese people or Chinese Americans, but the Chinese Communist Party is the threat.
From hacking corporations to get data to hacking health insurance companies and social media companies for personal info, the Chinese Communist Party appears to be taking steps to steal Americans' sensitive information. Right now, there are open investigations into this matter in all 56 of the FBI's field offices. And they open a new similar case about every 10 hours.
And over the past decade, we've seen economic espionage cases with a link to China increase by approximately 1,300%. The stakes could not be higher, and the potential economic harm to American businesses and the economy as a whole.
One of the regime's tactics to undermine America's economy is to bribe scientists to steal technology. They then use the stolen technology to put the American company, its inventor, out of business. That's what happened with the Texas-based scientist Shan Shi, and he's now in prison. He stole trade secrets regarding syntactic foam used in Navy submarines. Then the Chinese conspirators patented the stolen product and offered a joint venture to the American company they had stolen it from.
To put it bluntly, this means American taxpayers are effectively footing the bill for China's own technological development.
And the regime has lots of tactics to try and influence U.S. public servants like governors, Congress members, and senators. They try to persuade the officials' views on Chinese issues such as Hong Kong and Taiwan. Take the so-called fox hunt program, for example. The Chinese regime describes it as an international anti-corruption campaign. But Ray says that's a cover-up, and that it's actually a way for the CCP to target people who are deemed a threat to their power, such as anyone seeking to expose its human rights abuses. Hundreds of the regime's fox hunt targets are American citizens or green card holders.
For example, when it couldn't locate one fox hunt target, the Chinese government sent an emissary to visit the target's family here in the United States. The message they said to pass on, the target had two options: return to China promptly or commit suicide.
Ray says in the past, if people refused to go back to China, the regime would either threaten them or arrest their family members in China. Ray expressed that this doesn't mean we should stop doing business with China completely, but he says the U.S. will not tolerate the unlawful behavior. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And the FBI director says there is much more to it than just these examples alone. But he's also encouraged to see our foreign partners working together with the U.S. to combat the CCP's threat.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Monday the United States is looking at banning Chinese social media apps, including the popular short video app TikTok.
I don't want to get out in front of the president, but it's something we're looking at.
TikTok is owned by China-based ByteDance. U.S. lawmakers have raised concerns over TikTok's handling of user data. Chinese laws require domestic companies to cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party's intelligence gathering. The company has said in the past that user data is not stored in China. Also on Monday, TikTok said it's exiting the Hong Kong market following Beijing's sweeping new national security law for the city. Last August, the company said it had 150,000 users in Hong Kong. It's a small share compared to its global user base. According to analytics from Sensor Tower, globally the TikTok app has been downloaded over 2 billion times after the first quarter of this year. TikTok was recently banned in its biggest market, India. The ban could cause the company to lose up to $6 billion.
We received a question asking if the investing and trading app Webull is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Some history: Webull is a free trading app. While it has a brokerage office in New York at Wall Street, it's affiliated with China's Fumi Technology. Located in Hunan, China, Fumi is not a public company. All big private or state-owned companies in China are required to have a party committee which oversees political affairs. Established in 2016, Fumi Tech's founders are former heads of China's retail giant Alibaba and smartphone maker Xiaomi. Webull grew rapidly in the first 18 months after launching and has expanded to the U.S. It offers lots of incentives for traders, but many wonder where that money comes from. The company received massive funding to the tune of millions in its startup stage. U.S. lawmakers have voiced concern over the opaque ties Chinese companies have to the regime. In a letter last year, Senators Charles Schumer and Tom Cotton expressed concern about another Chinese app, TikTok, saying, quote, security experts have voiced concerns that China's vague patchwork of intelligence, national security, and cybersecurity laws compel Chinese companies to support and cooperate with intelligence work controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has implemented Article 43 of Beijing's national security law. That means the city's special police can enter private premises without a warrant, restrict people from leaving Hong Kong, forfeit or freeze assets, intercept communications, and ask foreign organizations for information. But it goes beyond that. Under the article, Hong Kong police can ask online platforms to remove information deemed a threat to national security under the law. Authorities can also ask those platforms to restrict people from accessing such information. It's been compared to the Great Firewall of China, now in Hong Kong. And finally, failure to comply can result in a hefty fine of nearly $13,000 and 1 year in jail. These police fall outside of Hong Kong law. Under Article 54, Beijing and Hong Kong authorities will join forces to manage foreign organizations and news agencies in the region. Meanwhile, according to Article 60, security agents sent from Beijing are not under Hong Kong's jurisdiction. That means they don't have to obey local laws. And lastly, according to Article 65, the ultimate power to interpret the law rests with Beijing's National People's Congress. The scope of the law has already drawn a lot of attention. Article 38 applies to anyone in the world, regardless of whether they are a resident of Hong Kong. A non-Hong Kong resident who violates the law outside of Hong Kong may also be subject to punishment. Under mainland criminal law, foreigners are not liable, but under the national security law, they are. Such people are at risk if they travel to China or even transfer flights inside a Hong Kong airport. Experts worry countries could extradite prisoners on political grounds to Beijing under this new law. Currently, Hong Kong has extradition agreements with 39 countries and regions worldwide. Only 9 of them have similar agreements with China. Canada became the first country to suspend its extradition treaty with Hong Kong. The UK seems poised to follow. Lawmakers are pushing other Western countries to follow suit. Now we turn to the Vatican. During his address on Sunday, Pope Francis reportedly omitted a pre-written paragraph of his speech. It was about China's new Hong Kong national security law. Reporters got a hold of the Pope's planned speech. One section expressed concern for the people of Hong Kong, but the Pope opted to skip over it. Italian journalist Marco Tossati released the omitted section and says he suspects the Pope's decision was driven by political pressure from Beijing. Hong Kong Bishop Emeritus Joseph Zen warns of the consequences of compromising with a totalitarian regime. He says the Hong Kong Catholic Church is being murdered by the Chinese Communist Party. 2 years ago, for the first time, Pope Francis recognized the regime's nomination of Catholic bishops. The CCP has long been suppressing Christians in China who refuse to follow the party's rules and instead abide by the Pope's words. Among them are bishops nominated by the Vatican. The head of France's cybersecurity agency says the country won't totally ban Huawei, but will discourage French telecoms companies from switching to it. For those already using Huawei, French authorities will only authorize them for 3 to 8 years. France's decision is a crucial one for 2 of its 4 telecoms operators, as half of their current mobile networks were made by Huawei. France's state-controlled telecoms company Orange has already chosen to partner with Nokia and Ericsson. That says Popard and other companies says the choice not to go with Huawei was made to protect French independence and not as an act of hostility towards China. The U.S. government has urged its allies to exclude Huawei. It cites a threat to national security due to Beijing's ability to use it for espionage policies. The U.S. government has urged its allies to exclude Huawei. It cites a threat to national security due to Beijing's ability to use it for espionage practices. A Hong Kong museum is chronicling the crackdown by Chinese troops on pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square. It's raising funds to digitize its collection over concerns about its future in the face of the new national security law.
Scores of colorful posters and shelves of books may soon be disappearing from the June 4th Museum in Hong Kong. The museum is dedicated to documenting the events which took place that fateful day in 1989 when Chinese troops cracked down on pro-democracy protesters in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Now, with fear and uncertainty looming over Hong Kong under China's new national security law, the museum is turning online to keep the collective memory of that event alive. Lee Chuk-yan, whose organization manages the museum, says they have raised nearly $8,000 for their cause so far.
And we do not know whether this June 4th museum, after the passing of the law, will they see it as sort of activities that are subversion? And therefore, I think that best protection for our artifacts and the materials that we have is to digitalize everything first and then put everything online.
Public discussion of Tiananmen is censored in mainland China, where the topic remains taboo. The June 4th Museum is one of the few places where the Tiananmen crackdown is still openly remembered, at least for now. But if the museum's activities are deemed to be subversive under the new security law, Lee fears that could all change soon. Under the sweeping legislation, which came into force just last week, secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces can all be punished by life in prison. The city's pro-democracy protesters have denounced what they see as China's gradual erosion of their freedoms.
UK lawmakers are toughening their stance on the CCP. The enactment of the national security law in Hong Kong by the CCP has contributed to the shift.
40 UK politicians spoke in Parliament and remotely July 1st to show support for their government's stern response to the new law. We spoke with 2 of them. Tom Randall said that he was concerned with the extraterritorial reach of the law.
I was listening to the contributions by my colleagues, wondering how many people in their criticisms of China would be committing offences under this act. Would they be potentially making themselves liable for arrest were they to step foot in Hong Kong or China at a later date?
He said he wants to see bilateral relations and investment, but he added that China is not living by the normal rules of conduct.
What I think they need to understand, and what I think the West needs to demonstrate to the Chinese Communist Party, is that their methods will not succeed.
He addressed what he considers the need to be united against oppression, torture and violation of the rule of law.
And if we can be resolute and robust and united and form a common position as democracies of the world, I believe that we will ultimately prevail over the forces of communism and darkness.
Dr. Philippa Whitford, MP, says Hong Kong's latest is a vague law that can be interpreted in many ways. She's concerned it would undermine NGOs working in Hong Kong.
So you're taking away independence of the judiciary, you're taking away civil and political rights. And that's really quite a dramatic step in the wrong direction.
Hong Kong has enjoyed freedoms that those on the mainland have not. Dr. Whitford described how they have had to fight for these recently. She said now these egregious arrests will create repression and fear.
And the national security law obviously creates that, and it's a very ill-defined threat, which basically means the Chinese authorities, who have the freedom now to set up physically agencies within Hong Kong, can do what they like, and it would all, in some fashion, be covered by the national security law.
Economic activity in all 50 states fell sharply in the first quarter of this year. That's according to the latest government data. And now states are weighing cuts in basic services like education, healthcare, and public safety.
State economic activity across the country has plummeted since the spread of the CCP virus. According to the U.S. Commerce Department, New York and Nevada were hit hardest by the pandemic. In the first quarter of 2020, their state GDPs dropped over 8%. Michigan and Louisiana were not far behind with over a 6% drop. No state economy posted a gain during that time. According to the Tax Policy Center, state governments could lose a combined $200 billion by next July. Every state except Vermont is required to balance its budget. States are now facing tough choices to either raise taxes or cut services to healthcare, education, transportation, and public safety. State and local governments have already laid off 1.5 million jobs in the second quarter. To help the economy recover, U.S. lawmakers passed the $2 trillion CARES Act back in March. Congress is planning to resume talks for yet another virus relief package later this month.
Biotech company Novavax received $1.6 billion for its development of a COVID-19 vaccine. This is the largest award yet from Operation Warp Speed, the White House program dedicated to the development and distribution of a CCP virus vaccine.
The White House's Operation Warp Speed has given out its biggest CCP virus vaccine funding yet, $1.6 billion to biotech company Novavax. The money will be used to produce 100 million doses of the vaccine by January or February next year. It will also cover the cost of running Phase 3 trials, the final stage of human testing. This could begin as early as October.
But it puts us at a scale where we can make, perhaps in the U.S., 500 plus million doses next year.
The Maryland-based company previously developed vaccines for other coronaviruses, including SARS and MERS, as well as for Ebola and influenza.
So the platform's been used. People recognize that it's safe. They recognize that it's been effective in other disease areas.
Novavax shares have risen as much as 41%. It's one of several companies to receive federal funding.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates, and see you tomorrow.